We begin this morning with another terrorist attack in Kaduna State. 48 hours after the bombing on the Abuja-Kaduna train, killing and maiming and kidnapping passengers on board, some daredevil terrorists again invaded a low-cost housing estate in Zaria City, Zaria local government area of Kaduna State yesterday, inflicting damage on residents and everything on site after allegedly kidnapping some people. This is as the governor of Kaduna State, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, seething with anger, frustration, and evident helplessness yesterday said, with the amount of information and intelligence in the hands of the nation's security agencies, they had all it will take to prevent attacks by terrorists and other criminal elements in the country. El-Rufai, who claimed that the Department of Security Services, DSS, had informants everywhere who were on top of their game monitoring plans and communications of criminals, said he was angry, frustrated, and felt totally helpless with the current turn of events. But the Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, who also visited some of the victims at the Nigerian Army Reference Hospital, Kaduna, has disclosed that the government might resort to using the Air Force to escort trains pending when the approval for security detection devices pulled through. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives had a committee investigating the recent attacks at the Kaduna airport, and the train attack is furious that the service chiefs were absent at the meeting with the committee. The Deputy Speaker, Idris Wase, refused to take submissions from the representatives of the Chief of Army Staff, Chief of Naval Staff, and Chief of Air Staff, and the Inspector General of Police, and the Office of the National Security Advisor, NSA. The Deputy Speaker says it is unfortunate that the heads of agencies treat summons from the Parliament with levity. The committee thereafter adjourned the meeting till Thursday with a message to service chiefs and heads of other invited agencies to appear in person.
We are not, this institution is not under the presidency. No, it's an institution of its own. You should know that one.
I have a
so you can't use that name.
No, I have a letter to
I don't want to hear that name.
Okay, sir.
All these are excuses as far as I'm concerned. And we are not willing. We are not willing, I must be frank. This situation is almost like a blind man to the government. We are losing our only pride today that we can showcase. That critical infrastructure that was about to be being destroyed is one of the legacies of this administration. In one soup or two soup, my colleague just came back now for his constituency. Giwa, 150 people killed and 70 killed. So, is this instruction given out directive given just yesterday? Has there not been the Speaker directive? Have there not been commitment as to the days that this thing will end? We are willing to do this. Every cooperation, every assistance, I believe the President has given. And as a Parliament, we are cooperated to ensure the safety of our people. So these are excuses that is not taken by the Parliament. There are no excuses. If you can't fly, you can't walk on the road, you can't go back. What is now? Where are we? Why would we dismiss ourselves? I'm constrained as a Deputy Speaker to continue the meeting because the accounting officers are the ones that are supposed to be here while you give them the necessary support. So we cannot proceed. And I'm saying with heavy heart, no matter the assignment our generals are handling, I believe the Parliament requires a listening ear.
Wow.
Are we still here? I recall a few years ago, 2-3 years ago, the Speaker, Femi Gbajabiamila, absolutely blasted the service chiefs for not honoring an invitation. If you recall, he threatened to report them to the President at the time. And this is where we still are. I can't imagine what else they have to do that's more important than coming to explain themselves to the House of Representatives. Now, with regards to Governor El-Rufai, his clearly completely incandescent at what has happened in Kaduna State. But he keeps, having this recurring theme that I find quite disturbing, I have to say. His solution is go there and just bomb the lot of them. And whoever they have held hostage, those they've kidnapped, will just be collateral damage. I'm sure that it makes perfect sense from his perspective, but from the perspective of the families of those people who have been held there, it will be a complete disaster. And I think that's why there's some hesitation. But with regards to the other things that he said about intelligence and the fact that these people have been monitored, it just indicates to me that we have a lot of resources in this country, but we're just not using them as we ought to. We're not using them efficiently, which now leads me to former Senate President Dr. Bukola Saraki's 5-point advice, which, to just paraphrase, basically that the service, the different security agencies should stop working in silos and should work in concert, and we should deploy technology and use intelligence. We've been hearing that for years, and nothing has happened, as we can see with what is happening in Kaduna. And the problem with the terrorist situation is that it doesn't merely continue, it actually escalates. That's always the issue. And if this is not nipped in the bud, then we're really in serious trouble. We've been talking about this for years, and we're still on the same page. As for the Minister of Transportation's idea about the Air Force escort, he actually said that that was done previously, but it had to be suspended because of visibility issues and what have you. It's such a shame that we live in a country where to catch a train from A to B, you need to be escorted by fighter jets. And if you see like a terrorist approaching, you're going to bomb them. And maybe the people on the train are going to somehow be miraculously unharmed. It's actually really extremely scary. And it just goes back to the point that the minister was making and has been making about that requisition that he made that was not granted, that 3 billion naira that he was talking about for the sensors and what have you. It would have been absurd to proudly launch, for any administration, to proudly launch a rail line and have these carriages that did not have seats. You must have seats. So I think that they should not have been launched without those sensors. They should all just have come as part of the package. Because when you try and do things separately, you now meet the kind of red tape that he has encountered and he's complaining about now. It's really so disgusting. And just the complete lack of respect for the lives of Nigerians and the way people play politics and God knows what else with our lives. And it could have been anybody on that train.
Okay, I mean, in the last 24 hours, there have been many reactions to the train incident, to the tragedy in that part of the country. Let's start with the governor. The governor, yes, you can understand where he's coming from. They say he's a person who is near the kitchen, that feels the heat, or he's a person, within the arena that knows where the shoe pinches. And this is the governor of that state, embattled, telling us that, look, Kaduna State has practically become a war zone. There have been many cases of kidnapping, violence, all around Kaduna, say in the last 1 year. And you have the governor always having to, fight the fire one after the other. If you attempt a catalog, it will come up with a very long list. Now, in this particular regard, he's accusing the security agencies of complete negligence, particularly the military. He says the military have the intelligence, but they are not doing anything about it. Now, you'll recall that when there was this attack on the Kaduna airport last Saturday, before this train incident, the general that addressed the press, he said, the terrorists, they were passing by, that they have their own route. And this is the governor, again, reiterating that, saying that these people, they have their accounts. They know where they are. And that what the military needs to do is to go and attack them. That they don't only know their hideouts, they also know their phone numbers. And that even the Department of State Services intercepts communication. So his question is valid. Why would the state fold its arms, stand by, and allow a group of terrorists to just carve out a territory or any space at all, either near the perimeter fence of the Kaduna International Port or near the train stations, and then claim that government cannot do anything about them. Now, his argument is strengthened by the fact that in November 2021, the Office of the Attorney General of the Federation was able to secure a judgment against these bandits. And in that particular case, by a federal high court in Abuja, the bandits were classified as terrorists. And the Office of the Attorney General and the government needed that to be able to use the Super Tucano jets that had been bought from the United States, because the United States had said, look, you can only use this as a clause in the terms of sale against terrorists. And it was on the basis of that that it could be, those jets could be used outside the Northeast. But Governor El-Rufai is saying that nobody has bothered to use those Super Tucano jets. If the fear is about casualties, where it's a war situation in his view, and that, there can be casualties, but solve the problem. He also said that the military should set up barracks in the affected areas, Regina and the other location where this particular incident occurred. So that, you will not have a situation whereby it has to take over 3 hours for the military to run from one part of Kaduna to another part. If it is nearby, this strategic infrastructure called rail line, then of course response time will be quick and effective. The third point that Governor Nasir El-Rufai made is that the last train from Abuja should not leave at 7 o'clock, 6:30 p.m. It should leave at 4 p.m. because this incident occurred at night and it was difficult because of the timing to mobilize. So his argument is that if the last train leaves at 4 p.m., it will still get to Abuja in daytime. And if there's going to be any issue, it will be possible to mobilize people. I do not disagree with all the points that have been raised by Governor Nasir El-Rufai. Now, again, it is instructive that Governor, I call him Governor, Minister Amechi was a former governor. Minister Amechi also agreed with, the governor that, look, these bandits, they are known, their hideouts are known, and the military authorities or whoever, should go after them and decimate their ranks. But he then went a step further, saying that the rail line, they will fix it quickly, operations will resume. He also says something about liaising with the villagers along the railway route so that these villagers can report suspicious movement. They are just thinking of that now. After there has been tragedy, lives have been lost. Isn't that plain-faced intelligence? We always have to wait for a tragedy to occur. And he says, okay, efforts have been made to put the sensors in place, to put surveillance strategy in place. We have to wait for people to die more than once for us to begin to think about that. Although Minister Amechi provided a clause. He said, provided his colleague in the Ministry of Finance will make the money available, 3 billion naira. He says the president is giving directives. That 3 billion naira, when is it going to come out? Meanwhile, in response to the president's directive that the railway should go back, the workers are saying we are not going anywhere if there is no improved security. Nowhere is safe. The roads are not safe. The air traffic, air travel is not safe. Why do you want to sacrifice railway workers? Okay, perhaps they also have a point. As for the service chiefs not showing up at the House of Reps, well, I hope they will show up today because Idris Wase was behaving like he's an headmaster, ordering service chiefs and other persons around. On Tuesday, there was a motion of urgent national importance. That's what the House of Reps wants these major, stakeholders to respond to. But they sent representatives, except the head of the Nigeria Airspace Management Agency, who came in person, and excuses were given. The permanent secretary of the Ministry of Transportation said, look, Minister Amechi is on assignment. And indeed, he was in Kaduna yesterday, which was where he made some of those statements that I've referred to. The service chiefs, a representative also reported, we're having a meeting based on the directive of the president. That the presiding officer at the House of Reps said, no, they must come in person. I hope they will show up today. I hope, when he sees their faces, that will make some significant difference. But we have to solve the problem, make the trains safe.
So I had so much to say, but no time. But I will quickly recite an haiku I wrote about Nigeria. It says, we've played with the fire, and now the fire is playing with us. That's all on news headlines. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Roto Sudiri, Michael Wilson, Adeso Amoro, and Aaron Akerjala to give us updates on Africa, global business, COVID-19, and sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rosa Sodiri is here to give us an African business update. Morning, Rosa.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Private equity news. Verod Capital has taken a minority stake in MedPlus Pharmaceuticals. So it's a development that we just found out about yesterday, and they're looking to plug into their expansive network across the country. They want to make healthcare more accessible to Nigerians. And hey, it's a private equity company, so they're hoping to make a return. Pharmaceuticals, if you think about it, they've also got as is the pharmaceuticals industry. It has its own challenges as far as counterfeit drugs are concerned, smuggling, and the need to have more manufacturing capabilities to be able to produce drugs in-house. MedPlus, they've got a diversified portfolio. It's not just medicines and over-the-counter drugs. They've got beauty products and a number of other items that they sell. And so Verod has seen that, and they're feeling that, okay, that's something that they can key into in order to spread that around. So that's, frankly, we do need more private equity, M&A news, and so on and so forth here in Nigeria. To another development, this is the Emefiele support group. They've popped up again. I saw this video where they've announced that they've raised about 67 million naira for 2023 nomination form. Now, they did acknowledge that the governor is ignoring them, right? They said that, we've seen his tweets. He's focused on his mandates. He's focused on the central bank mandate. That's all he cares about right now. But they still want him to run. They said that they are looking to notch, I think, 100 million naira before the election so they can get nomination form. Something that's very interesting here that I call, what did I call that thing? Is this search engine, SES, search engine
optimization.
No, search engine serendipity. If you remember when Kanye West released his album Ye, and Burna Boy also released a single called Ye at the same time. Well, Burna Boy's single shot up because everybody was searching for Ye, and then they found his album.
Oh, yeah, okay.
ESG is environmental sustainability goals. It's also a Emefiele support group. So I thought that up, and it's going to be interesting hashtagging that and seeing how that develops going forward. But that's the latest. Again, the governor is focused on his mandates, and he's so far ignored all that. To Egypt, this is really huge coming out of Egypt. Saudi Arabia, take a look at this chart. These Middle East wealth funds have pumped about $22 billion, or they've pledged to pump $22 billion into Egypt. Egypt has been facing a number of challenges as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war. They get wheat. They just happen to get wheat from both Russia and Ukraine, so they're being hit hard there. Fuel prices have gone up. Egypt has raised its benchmark interest rate in an emergency meeting. It's allowed the Egyptian pound to weaken. What else? I mean, inflation is climbing. So the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund, they said they're going to put $15 billion into Egypt's economy. They made a $5 billion deposit into Egypt's central bank. Just gave them $5 billion off the bat. Then they said they're going to put another $10 billion in agriculture, education, healthcare, and so on and so forth. The UAE, through their Abu Dhabi Wealth Fund, they pledged $2 billion. Qatar pledged $5 billion. And I don't know if you've seen the 2006 movie, Friends with Money. Jennifer Aniston was in that movie. And then I think Joan Cusack. Well, Jennifer Aniston is Egypt. It brought up the debate of whether or not...
She was a nanny, right?
Yeah, she was, right. And she had all these wealthy friends that just decided to help her out. It brought up the debate of whether or not, is Egypt an African country, or is it, Middle East? Because these are regional Middle East countries, and these Saudi Arabia press release that came out was like, we want to help the Egyptian economy get out of this issue that it's in as a result of the quagmire created by the Russia-Ukraine war and what it meant for them. Also, Egypt
but it's almost the Middle East.
Right. So look.
It's almost the Middle East.
Think about.
If you go back, why was Sadat killed?
Yeah. But if you think about Egypt's the Suez Canal, the proximity to Europe, the proximity to the Middle East. I mean, it's location. But Egypt is also looking to get a loan from the IMF in order to assist them as well. So that's just, if you think about petrodollar friends and what that means to you. That's incredible. Finally, Kenya. Doctor, this one's for you. Kenya, they held their benchmark interest rate at 7%. Adopted the same language as Nigeria. They said they're going to maintain an accommodative stance. They haven't changed that. That interest rate has not moved in like 2 years. But it's because inflation is at a 12-month low in Kenya, so they didn't feel the need to. The MPC didn't feel the need to raise rates, and that's our update.
It's interesting, but I do think Egypt is Middle East. Look at the Arab-Israeli wars; they're always in there. So
yeah, well, they just lost to Senegal in the World Cup qualifier, so they're African, right? You'd say the debate continues.
But I mean, by that association, I mean, but a lot is happening, as regards, the flow of the economy, and I'll first go back to, Verod Capital taking over major equity in MedPlus.
MedPlus, yeah.
This has been on for a while. There's been this back and forth as regards even MedPlus itself. Some, initial investors, having problems with the owner, and that went back and forth, and we saw how it went. And Verod Capital too taking another stake in it, because definitely it's because they want to expand their horizon and they really want to make money.
Right.
But one thing it has shown is that actually we now have Nigerian pharmaceutical brands that are going worldwide, that they have enough capital to do a lot.
Right.
The likes of the MedPlus of this world, the Health Plus of this world, and they're getting a lot of foreign capital. So that's another narrative about the fact that actually money is coming in, to these sectors. The initial hitherto brick-and-mortar chemists, as it were, called, have changed. So you have better chains, pharmaceutical chains all over the country that are getting real money and they can expand. And that's why you can see that MedPlus did expand, astronomically over the years because it got some very good capital. So that's some good side. But when you look at it, the slant is also always the fact that the companies are nimble, they're agile, and they have a technological undertone to it. Because when you look at it too, there's a bit of technology in the business model for MedPlus and the likes. Egypt, they will definitely get support, they'll get help, people will rally around them and all of that. It's not only from the Middle East they enjoy. They enjoy a lot of free money too as regards, security from the Americans. The budget is quite heavy. The Egyptian army is quite one of the strongest armies in Africa. So by that proximity, they get a lot. And that's why you see when you look at the ecosystem in the northern part of Africa, it's quite different. I mean, just from Malaga to Tangier in Morocco, it's about 5 hours over the water. So you can see that level of proximity, and it also helps them when they even do businesses with Europe.
Right.
They have a lot of business going on with Europe and the likes, and it's helped them a great deal. Concerning wheat too, it's coming up to roost because of the war.
It is.
Nobody should be surprised that, the Egyptian economy is getting a lot of support. The economy in Egypt did much better than many African economies last year, despite the uncertainties, the global shocks that many economies had to deal with. And you recall, just about a week ago, the IMF, apart from the money they made available to Egypt last year, had also issued a statement, I think on March 23rd, expressing confidence in the efforts of the Egyptian financial managers to further strengthen the economy and to reposition it. The truth of the matter is that if all the variables look attractive, then of course you will attract money. You will attract the support that Egypt asked for and is now getting, both from the Middle East and also from the IMF. As for Verod Capital, yes, Verod Capital Equity Fund firm, they are into insurance, they're into health, they're into banking, now pharmaceutical. It's good to see them supporting MedPlus, the largest pharmaceutical retail outlet in Nigeria, with a total of 79 outlets. But when, you started with the story, what came to mind is, okay, how about that other matter? The CEO and founder, Mrs. Joke Bakare, the other time was in the media protesting about how there was, a devious attempt to push her out of the management of the place.
Right.
And a new person, was appointed to manage the business, and the impression was given out there that she was not managing it well.
Right.
So I wanted to ask you, how has that matter been resolved? Did she go to court, or was she pushed to the subordinate position that she was being offered by the investors, another private equity firm, right? That tried to push her out. And then third, as for Kenya. Well, Kenya says, if you look at the basic indicators, inflation, 5.4% in January. Now it's come down to 5.1%. In terms of growth, Kenya seems to be doing well in business services, in manufacturing, in trade, in some other sectors of the economy. And it is that has given, the Central Bank of Kenya, or CBK, as it is known, the confidence that the economy is resilient. They've taken this accommodative stance since 2 years ago, as you pointed out. And they are also hoping that the economy will even do much better, with all the indicators quite strong. So I don't think it's as if they put this accommodative stance of 7%, right?
Right, yeah, 7%. Right, 7%. That's right.
From the blues.
Right.
But I suspected where you were going. I thought you were going to say compare with Nigeria.
I know.
But they are even saying that they have very strong reserves.
Yeah, right.
And so they are in a comfortable place.
Yeah.
But I didn't get that explanation from the Nigerian end, other than Nigeria just being cautious.
Right.
So they have strong. Okay.
Sorry, I thought you were done.
No, please carry on.
It was Health Plus that had that problem.
Yeah, not Med Plus.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
mix it up.
Yeah,
Completely different entity.
Good.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, it was Health Plus.
Health Plus, okay.
See the name association thing.
There's a plus on the back.
I was gonna say
Thanks so much for that. So good. Thank you.
So there are two different.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Moving on now to more business update. Michael Wilson joins us from London. Good morning.
Good morning. Basically, a bit of disappointment, really, about the supposed peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, and also a very mixed Asia-Pacific session. China showing a bit of a contraction in manufacturing activity, nothing for them to get too worried about. But generally speaking, Asia-Pacific markets in mainland China declined. In morning trade, certainly the Shanghai Composite shed about 0.2%. Chinese factory activity, as I said, shrank in March, according to official data released earlier today. The PMI 49.5 as opposed to 50.2, so marginal contraction. But this is after the China equivalent of their beige book, in other words, their official business activity monitor shows that they were hit quite hard by the COVID outbreak in the first quarter of the year. And it's certain that economic activity, well, at least not certain, but being predicted by various experts in China that it will slow again in the second quarter. Hong Kong's Hang Seng down about about 0.5%, really. But basically, the interesting thing about this is Baidu, which the Chinese company with shares in Hong Kong, it's tumbled more than 4% after the firms warned that the US Securities and Exchange Commission might be taking a slightly heavier regulatory stance towards it. China's zero COVID policy is also testing small businesses. I reported earlier in the week that the small businesses are getting some kind of help. Well, they certainly are. State-owned corporations, of course, are the biggest economic factor in China, but similar non-state-owned businesses and the smaller ones account for the majority of national growth and jobs. As far as the United States is concerned, let's switch our attention there. Stock futures slightly lower, given the disappointment about those talks and so on. Although yesterday, bit of a down session yesterday. Quite honestly, the last day of the year is when people tend to measure up their portfolios and try to give a decent gloss on what's been happening over the month. Investors, though, certainly in search of stocks that pay high and stable dividends. Actually quite good for them too. That's what everybody tries to aim for. It's the magic of compound interest, which I don't have time to go into now, but you know what I mean. President Joe Biden is going to release another up to 1 million barrels of oil a day. He's come under intense domestic pressure because of the rise in pump prices in the United States. The duration of the release or when it's going to happen is not particularly clear at the moment, but you see inflation reaching a 4-year high in the United States and so on. The Amazon Union in Alabama, a closely watched business of unionization in that company. Lower than expected turnout, 2,300 ballots. There were about 30%, much lower than the first turnout that they actually had. It could be that workers are probably not that concerned about it. They ought to be, because the National Labour Relations Department reported about Amazon, saying that Amazon had unfairly interfered with the union contest when it last happened. The EU is going to pressure China. They're having a virtual summit tomorrow. It's going to be a defining moment for EU-China relations. If you remember, there's concern among Western officials, obviously, about the role that China's actually playing right now. Chinese authorities have so far refused to call what's happening in Ukraine a Russian invasion. Now, they both signed an agreement in late 2020, just before President Joe Biden arrived in the White House. There's still a great deal of discussion there, and maybe we'll hear a bit more about that over the weekend. I'm going to just draw a very broad brushstroke across the EU economies themselves and show how they're actually suffering. But it's increasingly strained by what's going on in the war and so on. Sanctions on Russia have pushed up energy prices. Now, that's sapped confidence across everywhere and so on. Germany, which is the bloc's largest economy, has received a warning from its government economic advisors that a recession is possibly just around the corner. Growth forecasts have been slashed to 1.8%, and the advisors who forecast are quite widely taken there are really showing a lot of concern about Germany, and of course France as well, as you're seeing there. Germany and Austria are taking steps to ration gas. Now, I'm not talking about petroleum, actually, gas as in the American sense. They're about gas for heating, and they will, and it may be, that they will enforce less gas consumption. This comes at a time when Moscow is asking for payment in rubles. They seem to be moving away slightly, softening their stance very, very slightly from that, but it's still quite indicative of what's going on in Europe. UK, British Airways failing IT failing again. This is a familiar problem with British Airways passengers and the airline itself. The latest in the technical failures, grounding aircraft and keeping people on planes and all those horrible things that happen when your plane actually lands. The biggest one was the IT failure in 2017 that really damaged the brand of British Airways, and very ironic that the new CEO Sean Doyle's brought in specifically to bring up the brand a few months ago. Well, it's going to suffer again as a result of these IT failures. As far as energy policy in the UK is concerned, that we may get more offshore farms, but certainly very little more onshore wind farms. This is probably because, well, it's certainly because of voters in Tory constituencies, what they call the Conservative heartland, saying we don't want that in our backyard. Thank you very much indeed. It may well be that this redefines energy policy, and of course it doesn't really affect what's happening in nuclear. That still has to be debated, given the amount of cost and cost overruns that there normally are. P&O ferries, I said to you that the Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, yesterday had been saying that ships that pay below minimum wage should not be allowed to go into ports. Well, the ports are saying to themselves, well, we shouldn't be policing this, because why should we? It's not our job to do it. And it means, clearly the ports are worried about flights of convenience ships not being able to come into their own ports and so on. But the UK major ports group said it's not our job to police what the government said. It's down to the government itself. And finally, oil. I did mention that Joe Biden has been saying he's going to release more things. The wholesale price is down about 4%. This morning, but we've got no real idea of when this is going to happen, and it's still very, very dependent upon what happens in the war. I've got Brent crude trading at about 107 and WTI trading at about 101 a barrel. That is the global view.
All right, Michael, let's talk energy a little bit this morning. The UK wants to expand its energy mix. It's currently working on Hinkley in Somerset, and is also working on Sizewell plants, 2 nuclear plants. But the problem is money. I mean, how are they going to, meet up to demands and get the real investors in that can bring in that money vis-a-vis this ever-changing world of gas and the needs to supply energy with the war that is going on in Russia? And secondly, Another thing happening, as regards, this war is the effect it's having. So yesterday we're talking about recession, and the fears are confirmed now. In fact, there are fears of recession in Germany, mainland Europe, and America as we speak. And they're saying the economies will not do well as a result of the war. What's your take on all of this?
Well, what my take on the last subject, you said the fears are confirmed. I would agree with that. Recession is not confirmed. So in other words, what we're seeing is fears of recession being confirmed, both in Europe and in the United States. I don't think there's anything new there, quite honestly. It doesn't take a group of government advisors in Germany to tell people like you and me exactly what the fears ought to be. Of course, there's fears of recession. There are always fears of recession when energy prices are so high. And until the energy market actually rebalances itself, which it may do for all we know. We just simply do not know. A major player's been taken out. Maybe things will change. Isn't it interesting that Russia has actually softened its demand to be paid in rubles over the past few days? It may be that they will be paid in dollars. And we hear, don't we, that the president of Russia, Mr. Putin, does not really know, or feels he's been misinformed by his generals conducting the war. So who's to know what's going to happen? We really don't know. So fears of recession confirmed, not necessarily recession confirmed, because as you know, that's an economic thing of 2 quarters in minus growth and so on. As far as energy is concerned here, the fear, what would be good is, Boris Johnson is saying at the moment that a catastrophic decision a few years ago not to diversify in energy. And I think a lot of countries around the world are feeling exactly the same kind of thing. The worry about nuclear is not so much getting rid of the nuclear waste and so on, which are concerns of organizations like Greenpeace and so on, but it's the cost of building, as you quite rightly say, £20 billion at least to build a nuclear plant. And then, of course, they always overrun because public things always do. It's the way of the world, unfortunately. Will we have to pay for this? Yes, I suspect we'll be paying for this for a long time in our energy bill. So you're quite right to put your finger on that. It's a further indication of the rise in the cost of living costs that we're facing right now, as most countries are.
Well, President Biden threatening to release 180 million barrels of oil from the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Now, as a result of that, there's been a slide in the spot price of WTI and also Brent crude. You referred to that earlier. And President Biden is expected to address, to give an address at 13:30 local time, 15:50 GMT. What do you think is likely to say? Is it likely to get into that quickly? OPEC and the allies are also meeting today, Thursday. Are we likely to hear anything different from OPEC? And tomorrow, the 29 nations in the International Energy Agency, they are meeting. IEA has called an emergency meeting. Are they likely to follow the example of the U.S. and also release oil, from their reserves, petrol from their reserves, to find a way of driving down the prices? Yes, Germany and Austria have more or less declared a gas emergency because Germany, in particular, will be most affected. 40% of its gas coming from Russia. Britain may not be affected. Just 3% of its gas coming from Russia. Britain can find some other options elsewhere. But France, Austria, Germany are affected. But what will be the implications? Because if they are going to ration gas, the impression being created is that households will be prioritized. Won't that affect businesses? And then on this issue about paying ruble, we can only pay in euros. Who's going to blink first? Although the Russians have said it won't happen immediately, they would work towards it gradually. And finally, you seem to have been vindicated again with your skepticism about cryptocurrency. There's been a major hack running into over $600 million into the running network, a gaming system that we're told has resulted in people losing a lot of money, from $500 to as much as over $10,000 in terms of digital assets. But would those cryptocurrency addicts, would they get their money back? Is there any protection for them? Or this is just simply another indication of the risk of this system of, financial engagement?
Well, you've covered a lot of ground there. Let's talk about Bitcoin. I don't, like you, I'm skeptical of it, and people lose money on it, and you go online and, you're faced with security problems and so on. I'm sorry about that, but that's the way of the world, unfortunately. Russia and the ruble, they seem to be doing a lot of blinking, don't they, Russia, quite honestly, as far as payments are concerned. It was just going to be about the ruble. Now they're thinking of maybe softening what they're going to do. The International Energy Agency, does it have power over what OPEC wants? I don't understand. I've never really understood about OPEC, quite honestly. What Biden was hoping for, if I can just bundle the whole thing together, was that the increase in oil in the oil price would tempt more nations to pump more oil. Clearly, the markets don't work like that. I suspect that what Biden will try to say at lunchtime, but it's only for domestic consumption. Remember, he's a politician, he's not an economist, and of course, many people are wondering whether his brain is actually still functioning properly. Not his physicality, but his actual brain. He's shown sometimes a remarkable lack of grasp in what's going on in the world. What's he going to say about releasing 1 million barrels of oil? Will it actually make a difference? I suspect there'll be something else which will hit the oil price tomorrow, and this will be quickly forgotten about. He's failed to actually failed to cement together an alliance of those who produce oil and those who consume oil or fossil fuels or whatever you care to call it, and it's all flapping in the wind. I mean, that is the problem right now. We simply don't know, and until we get any kind of certainty over what's going to happen as far as Russian gas is concerned, and I suspect we won't, then we won't. As far as Germany and Austria are concerned, yes, well, that's what they're going to do, and of course it will affect business, and I think that's where we started this discussion this morning, talking about fears of recession. I think a lot of businesses are going to be affected by it. It's the sort of world that we live in. We navigate it, don't we, day by day, because that's what we're supposed to do. It's very difficult to draw anything strong over this. All I can say is that the United States is still, I think it will avoid recession. I only feel that because even though the interest rates are coming, they're only going to be gradual. This is what the markets are saying, and I tend to go what the markets think, and they think that there would rather be a slight control over inflation than stagflation running wild.
Well, thank you very much, Wilson. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Adeso Amaro is here with us. Adeso, great to have you. Good morning.
Good morning, Rufai. Great to be here. Good morning, Tundu, and good morning, Dr. Abati.
Morning.
Morning. Well, the number of people killed by coronavirus surged globally last week by 43%. And WHO says this is likely due to changes in how COVID-19 deaths were reported in the Americas, and of course the newly adjusted figures coming out from India. In its latest weekly report on the pandemic, the health agency says the number of new coronavirus cases, however, fell everywhere, including in the WHO's Western Pacific region, where we've seen those cases rising since December. You should have the Johns Hopkins University tally on your screen. Those are the latest important figures you should know about this pandemic. But there's also one important data, which is the number of people who have recovered from this virus. A vast majority of people recover. However, there are those who continue to have symptoms weeks, months after. It's known as the long COVID. Well, in all, there were 10 million new COVID-19 infections and 45,000 deaths in the last 7 days. To Nigeria, where Lagos, Bauchi, the Federal Capital Territory, Abia, Kaduna, Kano, Plateau, Oyo, and Rivers States were responsible for the new 74 infections and no COVID-19 related deaths in the latest data released by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. At the moment, Nigeria has lost 3,142 people to the virus. And the Nigerian Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, otherwise known as NAFDAC, has been upgraded by the WHO to the high maturity level 3. Now, the maturity level 3 status means that NAFDAC has been found to function well and that it could be eligible for inclusion into the transitional WHO-listed authorities, a list that will comprise the world's regulators of reference. Nigeria achieved this status for medicines and imported vaccines. The NAFDAC DG, Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, announced this yesterday in Abuja. She also said that a vaccine laboratory is under construction in Lagos and to be ready by the middle of this year. Rufai, just yesterday we were talking about vaccines and what Nigeria is doing. Well, Professor Mojisola says by the mid of this year, around June, Nigeria should be producing its vaccine again. Nigeria is one of the 6 countries selected by the WHO to produce the mRNA COVID-19 vaccine. It was not only Nigeria that received this upgrade yesterday. Egypt also was upgraded by the WHO, and Nigeria and Egypt yesterday then joined Ghana and Tanzania as countries with effective regulatory systems in Africa. That's good news. Away from Nigeria, President Joe Biden has received a second COVID-19 booster shot at the White House, where he declared that the U.S. had reached a new moment in the pandemic with tools to protect people and the virus no longer controlling their lives. Well, his shot comes a day after the FDA authorized a new round of Moderna and Pfizer vaccine for those 50 and above in the USA. The president, who received his initial booster in September last year, is one of the 34 million Americans now eligible for that second booster shot, or the 4th coronavirus vaccine jab. Finally, if you have been itching to go on a cruise, but you have been nervous about the COVID-19, well, here's some good news for you. The US CDC dropped its risk assessment of cruise travel. For more than 2 years now, health officials have been warning people not to go on a cruise. But considering that the COVID-19 cases have been dropping, especially on cruise ships in the past week, the CDC gave the green light yesterday. But while it lifted the health notice, officials now say it's up to the passengers to determine their own health risks before going on board a cruise ship. Tundum, would you be going on a cruise ship anytime soon?
Absolutely not. No way. I still remember those awful reports when people were stuck on that. It was the Princess cruise ship, wasn't it? For ages and ages, and it had a horrendous time. No, thank you. I want to say congratulations to Professor Adeyeye and her team. This is a very big deal. And she also thanked the Buhari administration for the investments in NAFDAC. She mentioned 4 billion naira here, 736 million naira there. And it just goes to show what we can achieve when we actually have the right priorities. But what I found interesting was she was saying that the first visit from the WHO was in June 2019. So this initiative actually predates the COVID-19 pandemic, which is also good to know, because it did appear that we were really caught on the back foot when COVID started and we had no idea. It's good to see that some thought was being put into the direction of going back to when we can be a producer of human vaccines. Right now, it's only animal vaccines, which is quite shameful. So that was good to know. Thank you for sharing.
Okay, well, congratulations to NAFDAC and also to the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. They work together. But the important thing here is also the leadership that have been provided by Professor Adeyeye. Nigeria started applying for this just a few weeks after she took over. Nobody before her thought of this. So she initiated it. The WHO was asking for about 868 recommendations to be met. They managed to meet just about 600, remaining about 147, and then COVID happened. After there has been a lull in COVID, they went back to it. And with the support of the government, we now have this category 3 maturity level classification, which is the 3rd in Africa, which means, of course, that NAFDAC has now been recognized at WHO as a body that can regulate and monitor the production of vaccines in Nigeria. Professor Adeyeye says, well, the ambition is to get to maturity level 4, which will give manufacturers of drugs in Nigeria a higher level of quality assurance. and that will make it possible for any drug produced in Nigeria to be sold anywhere in the world. So that's quite a big target. But you know how it is in Nigeria. We don't often institutionalize things. If Professor Adeyeye leaves NAFDAC tomorrow, will this process be sustained? We're told that we have laboratories that government provided money for. Will those laboratories be maintained? These are the major challenges, because oftentimes the dynamism of persons, once those persons leave the scene, it's not sustained. As for President Biden taking a fourth booster shot, as it were, because after the approval by the US FDA and the Centers for Disease Control, and then of course he's asking Congress for more money to provide more supplies, even if they have enough at this moment. So on the average, persons who are 50 and above in the US and people who are immunosuppressed or who are cancer patients can, with the approval from the US FDA and CDC, take up to the fourth dose. Okay? The thing that occurs to me immediately is the point about equity, vaccine equity. In many parts of the developing world, some people have not even been able to take just one dose. In some other countries, people can take the fourth dose. Maybe tomorrow, after another 3-4 months, the FDA and CDC in the US will approve that you can take the fifth dose, you can take the sixth dose. Okay, US has the highest number of deaths, about 970,000 deaths since the pandemic began. But the fact that some countries like US and Israel, can continue to give more vaccination. And in Africa, only 2 countries have been able to do 70%, as Seychelles and Mauritius, and on the average in the whole of Africa, 15%, compared to the global average of 57% and 64% vaccination rate in Europe. Okay, so I think the WHO is right. Before some people begin to get 10 doses, I mean, is there something we need to do more about this distribution to ensure equity? That, for me, is the big concern. As for CDC, in the US also saying people can go on cruise ships or go cruising, and they make their own choice. Well, it's up to the individuals who want to go on a cruise, to make their choice. But I guess that the affected companies, they are legitimately excited, and they will probably insist on full vaccination. Because as recently as January, cruise ships, around the US waters, the Caribbean and South America, reported a very high rate of infection, particularly with regard to the Omicron variant, the BA2. Okay? The only thing, of course, is that we're told that the BA2 variant, while it is 30% more transmissible, does not necessarily result in severe illness or hospitalization. So CDC is simply saying, it's your choice.
All right. Thank you so much, Adesua, for your insights. That was a very good news.
Thank you, guys.
And I'm really excited about that. Dr. Batu?
Yeah, thank you very much, Adesua.